I never thought it would come to this. The last thing I expected to hear from her that evening, of all evenings, was the simple, yet devastating request. I want you to leave. The irony of it all wasn't lost on me. Just a few months ago, I was the one who had been asked to stay. I had held her hand as we stood on the doorstep of our first house together, our smiles reflecting the excitement of what lay ahead. Our entire future seemed to stretch before us, promising happiness, shared moments, a home. But now that was all gone. And in that moment, standing in our living room, I had no idea how everything had unraveled so quickly. The air between us was heavy, thick with tension. There was no shouting, no dramatic gestures. It was all too quiet, too calm, like the calm before a storm that would wipe everything out. Her eyes met mine, and I could see it clearly. She was no longer the woman I had married. Her face was almost serene, but beneath it, something darker lingered. Something I had ignored for far too long. The smile she gave me wasn't the kind of smile I had once lived for. It wasn't full of warmth, but more like a mask. A perfect mask. You're not happy here, she continued, her voice steady. And neither am I. This is over. I stood there, frozen, unsure how to respond. Was I hearing this correctly? Had she just told me that after everything, after the late-night talks, the shared dreams, the years we had spent together, it was over? I looked around our living room, our home. It was the place where we had built so many memories, yet it now felt like a foreign land, unrecognizable and cold. The reality of her words hung in the air like smoke. Is this really how you want to end it? I asked, my voice shaking slightly. She didn't flinch. I don't want to fight anymore. I just want things to be different. I felt the earth beneath me shift. How had we gotten here? What had I missed? I searched for answers, my mind scrambling to piece together the puzzle that had been our life. But all I could do was stare at her, trying to read her face, trying to understand why she looked so calm when my world was crashing around me. I had always been the one to bend, to accommodate, to give her space when she needed it. I thought that was love. But now, as I stood there, I realized I had been fooling myself. I had let her slip away bit by bit, letting the distance grow between us without even noticing it. I'm leaving tonight, she added, turning to pick up her coat. I don't want you here when I come back. We need time apart. We both do. Time apart. It wasn't just time we needed. It was a total collapse of everything we'd built. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her why. Why now? What had changed? Why had she waited until this moment to tell me that she wanted to walk away? But I didn't. I just stood there, watching as she grabbed her purse and walked out the door. I had no plan. No idea what came next. I just knew I couldn't let this moment slip by without doing something. Something to make her realize what she was throwing away. I had no idea where she was going or what she was doing. All I knew was that I couldn't stay here and pretend everything was okay anymore. She had left, but I wasn't done yet. It was time for me to make my move. And whatever happened next, she would regret walking out. The door clicked shut behind her, and for a moment, the silence swallowed everything around me. I stood there, in our living room, with nothing but the echo of her footsteps fading away. But I wasn't as lost as I felt. My mind was racing, and beneath the shock, there was something else stirring. Something colder, something that had been lurking beneath the surface for far too long. I took a slow breath, running my hands through my hair. She wanted space? Time apart. Fine. But she wasn't going to get away that easily. Not without a consequence. You see, I wasn't the kind of guy who would normally take revenge. In fact, I was the kind of person who always played the long game. Quiet, observant, and patient. I had let Hannah drift for so long, convincing myself that everything would work out. But now, I was done with that. I wasn't going to sit in the shadows anymore, waiting for her to make the next move. This time, I was in control. I moved toward the kitchen, my hands mechanically opening the drawer to grab the pen and notepad. I didn't have a clear plan just yet, but I knew that my next move had to be sharp, calculated. I had already made up my mind. I wasn't going to let her think she could just walk away from this. Not after everything. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the blank notepad. What did I need? A strategy? A message? Maybe something bigger than just a simple reaction. My life, the life I had built around her, was shattering. And if she thought this was going to be an easy escape, she was wrong. I had to act quickly. I had been the perfect husband for so long, but now I needed to be something else, someone else. Someone who could get the answers I deserved. I thought about how easily she had said goodbye, like it didn't even matter to her. Like the years we spent together, our vacations, our inside jokes, our plans for the future, meant nothing. I couldn't accept that. I refused to. I walked over to my desk, opened my laptop, and started typing. This wasn't going to be a simple message. This wasn't going to be me begging for her to come back. No, this was going to be something more subtle. Something that would make her second-guess every single decision she had made. I wasn't going to just sit back and let her have the last word. The plan had already begun. Over the next few days, I gathered information, anything I could about where she had been going during the last few weeks. She had been distant, and I knew something was off. A few casual inquiries to people she worked with, a few quiet observations around the house. I didn't let her know that I was watching. I didn't confront her. Instead, I let things unfold naturally. But the more I learned, the more I realized how deep the lies ran. She had been sneaking around behind my back for longer than I thought. The places she'd visited, the phone calls she'd made late at night, it was all adding up. One evening, after a long day of gathering what I needed, I sat down with the phone in my hand, scrolling through her messages. She thought I wouldn't look. She thought I wouldn't care enough to check. But now, I had no choice. I needed to know everything. And there it was, clear as day. A string of texts between her and Alex, her work friend. But the tone was different. It wasn't just business. There were flirtatious comments, hidden messages between the lines. I wasn't just paranoid. I wasn't just imagining things. She had been seeing him. It wasn't a business trip. It was a cover. The knot in my stomach tightened. The anger that had been simmering below the surface was now a full-blown fire. She had betrayed me, and I wasn't going to just let her get away with it. I closed the phone, took a deep breath, and looked around the room. The house felt foreign to me now. It wasn't home anymore. It was a place full of memories that meant nothing. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to beg for her to come back. I wasn't going to apologize for things I didn't do wrong. No, I was going to show her that I had more control than she realized. And when she came back, she'd be the one left speechless. The days passed by, each one heavier than the last. I had never felt more alone in my life, but I refused to let myself wallow in the pain. Every second of silence between us felt like it was building toward something bigger, something that would force her to confront the consequences of her actions. I didn't let myself think about her absence. Instead, I focused on the plan I had set in motion. I was in control now, and I wasn't about to lose that control. I kept to my routine, work, meetings, walks around the neighborhood. But the moment I walked through the door, I found myself thinking about her and Alex. What was going on between them? Were they still in touch? Were they more than just colleagues? I couldn't stop the questions from flooding my mind, but I didn't ask her. Not yet. I wasn't ready to give her that power, the power to spin the narrative however she wanted. I had learned the hard way that control was the only thing I could count on. That's why I didn't push her to come back sooner. I wanted her to return when she realized she had nothing left to escape to. I wanted her to see the life she had abandoned and feel the weight of her own choices. She texted me a few times while she was away, but they were short, unimportant messages. She sent updates, nothing substantial, just little tidbits of information meant to keep me from questioning her too much. But I didn't respond. I wanted her to think I had moved on, that I didn't care. I wanted her to feel the same emptiness that had been growing inside me. Then, on the 5th day, she called me. "I'm coming back tomorrow," she said. The words were casual, but I could hear the hesitation in her voice. I was thinking we could talk. I think. Maybe I've had some time to think, and I want to make things right. I knew what she was doing. She was trying to regain some control over the situation, to make it sound like she was offering me an olive branch. But I wasn't fooled. The fact that she was coming back didn't change anything. She could say whatever she wanted, but I was already 2 steps ahead. I didn't say much. I just nodded into the phone and hung up. I knew that when she returned, she wouldn't find me sitting here, waiting for her to apologize. She wouldn't find the desperate husband who had been clinging to the hope of reconciliation. She'd find a different version of me, a version who had taken back the power she thought she had stolen from me. The next day, she came through the door at precisely the time I expected. She looked the same, her tired eyes betraying the facade of confidence she had put on during her trip. She stood in the doorway, her suitcase in hand, waiting for me to say something. I didn't. I simply looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was seeing her clearly. Not the woman I had married, but the woman she had become. Cold. detached, selfish, the woman who thought she could walk away without consequence. I think we need to talk, she said softly, stepping into the living room. I nodded, but I didn't move. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of me running around trying to fix things. Go ahead, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. Talk. She took a deep breath, as though gathering her thoughts, and then started. I've been thinking a lot about everything. About us. About the trip. I made a mistake. I should have never gone. And I should have never kept things from you. Alex. He's just a friend. Nothing more. She glanced down, almost as if she was waiting for me to comfort her. But I stayed silent, watching her. I know I've hurt you, she continued, her eyes searching mine for some sign of understanding. But I need you to know it was never about you. I was just confused. We've been growing apart for a while, and I didn't know how to fix it. I let the words hang in the air between us for a moment, but I didn't rush to respond. Instead, I let the silence stretch on, watching her squirm under the weight of my gaze. You're right about one thing, I finally said. We've been growing apart. But it's not just because of you, Hannah. It's because of both of us. The difference is, I'm not the one who ran off with someone else. Her face flushed, and she opened her mouth to protest, but I raised a hand to stop her. No, don't. I'm done hearing excuses. The truth is, I knew something was off. I just didn't want to believe it. But now that I know, now that I see who you've really become, I realize I can't keep pretending like everything is okay. You don't get to break our vows and then ask me to just forgive and forget. That's not how this works. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw a hint of fear flash across her face. What do you mean? What are you saying? I stood up, walking towards her slowly. My voice was low but firm. I mean that I'm done. I'm done being the man who stands here hoping you'll change, hoping you'll come back and make things right. I've already made my decision. And you need to understand, you've lost me. The silence was deafening as she stared at me, her face frozen in shock. But I wasn't finished. I'm not the man you left behind, Hannah, I added. And I'm not going to wait around for you to realize that you can't just take me for granted anymore. For a long moment, she said nothing. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She was speechless, and that was exactly what I had wanted. She had underestimated me, and now she would realize exactly how far she had pushed me. The words I had just spoken hung in the air, thick and suffocating. For a moment, Hannah stood there, absolutely still, her eyes wide, processing what I had just said. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, her shock slowly giving way to realization. She had expected something different, probably some tearful plea, some desperate apology from me. She had assumed I would be the same person I had always been, the man who let her walk all over him, the one who always gave in. But that wasn't me anymore. I was done, and I had to admit, it felt good. It felt freeing, like a weight I hadn't realized was on my shoulders had suddenly been lifted. But the shock on her face? That was priceless. You can't just walk away from this, Hannah. I continued, my voice calm but steady, not an ounce of hesitation in it. You can't just tell me I need to stay away and expect me to sit here and wait for your return. That's not how life works. Not anymore. Her eyes flickered between panic and disbelief. She opened her mouth as if to argue, but no words came. I watched her, standing there, struggling to process this shift in power. She was used to controlling everything between us. She thought she had all the cards. She thought she could break my heart and then come back when it suited her. But she had miscalculated. I wasn't the person she thought I was. I wasn't the same man who used to beg her for her love. That version of me was gone, replaced by someone who knew his worth and wasn't going to settle for being anyone's second choice. She took a shaky breath, trying to steady herself. You don't mean that, she whispered, almost pleading, as if hoping she could somehow reverse the course I had set in motion. I shook my head slowly, my gaze never leaving hers. No, I do mean it. And the more I think about everything you've done, the more I realize that I've been living in a lie. We've both been lying to each other for far too long. I've been trying to hold on to something that wasn't there, and now I see things clearly. Her face twisted in confusion and frustration. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You can't just throw everything away like this. We've been through so much together. We've been through a lot, yes. I replied, each word coming out slower, more deliberate. But that's exactly why I'm done. I've been giving you the benefit of the doubt for too long, hoping that things would magically fix themselves. But they haven't, and they won't. This isn't something that can be fixed by just talking it out. She shook her head, and there it was, the faintest trace of fear. She hadn't expected me to be this resolute. She hadn't expected me to stand up for myself, to finally call her out on everything she'd done. She had expected me to crumble, to beg her to stay. But I wasn't going to do that. Not anymore. "What are you going to do?" she finally asked, her voice trembling slightly. She was starting to understand now that I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't about to back down. She had underestimated me, and now I was going to make sure she realized just how wrong she was. I leaned in a little, my voice dropping to a near whisper. "I'm going to do what I should have done a long time ago. I'm going to take back my life. And that means I'm not just going to sit here and let you come and go as you please. You don't get to decide when I'm good enough for you and when I'm not. You lost that right." Her mouth opened, then closed, as if she was looking for the right words, but there were none. She had no argument left. She couldn't deny the truth. The truth was, she had pushed me away, and now that I was finally standing up for myself, she had nowhere to turn. The silence between us stretched on. I could hear her breath coming in shallow bursts, the tension so thick it almost felt like I could touch it. For a moment, I thought she might say something, beg for forgiveness, try to manipulate me into giving her another chance. But she didn't. Instead, she simply turned and walked toward the door. "I need time," she said softly, almost to herself. "I'll figure things out." I didn't stop her. I didn't chase after her. I didn't even say goodbye, because I knew something she didn't. She wasn't the one in control anymore. And when she realized that, when she realized the depth of her mistakes, it would be too late. I watched her leave, but this time, I didn't feel the sinking feeling in my chest. I didn't feel the hopelessness I once would have felt. Instead, I felt relief. It was over. And now, it was my turn to write the next chapter. The next day, I didn't call her. I didn't text. I didn't beg. I didn't look for her. I knew exactly what I had to do next. And when she came crawling back, which I knew she eventually would, I would be ready. But this time, the power was mine. And I wasn't about to let her have it back. The following days were a blur, but one thing became crystal clear to me. I wasn't going to let her back into my life so easily. I was done with the old patterns, the same predictable cycle of hurt, apologies, and temporary fixes. Hannah had broken something in me, something I couldn't just patch up with a few kind words or a romantic gesture. I wasn't going to let her come back and pretend nothing had happened. This time, I was in control, and I was going to make sure she understood the price of her actions. Hannah didn't try to reach out immediately after she left. The first night was quiet. I expected the phone calls, the desperate texts, the pleadings for forgiveness. But nothing. It made me wonder if she truly understood the weight of what had happened, or if she was just waiting for me to make the next move. Either way, I wasn't going to rush it. I had to let her feel the void she had left behind. 2 days passed, and just when I thought she might be giving me space to breathe, I got a message from her. It wasn't anything special, just a simple text saying, "We need to talk." The irony didn't escape me. She was the one who wanted distance. She was the one who needed time away. But now, here she was, trying to regain control of the situation. I stared at the message for a while, wondering what her angle was. Was she coming back to apologize? Or was this just another one of her attempts to manipulate the situation? Either way, I wasn't going to let her dictate the terms of this conversation. She had already taken too much from me. Now it was my turn. I responded simply, "We'll talk when I'm ready." I sat back and thought about it. This wasn't just about having a conversation anymore. It was about setting boundaries, about showing her that I wasn't the same man who would simply accept whatever crumbs she decided to throw my way. This time, the power lay in my hands, and I wasn't going to squander it. Over the next few days, she tried to reach out several more times, calls, texts, even a few emails. Each time, I ignored her. I knew she was frustrated. I knew she was wondering why I wasn't chasing her, why I wasn't begging for her forgiveness. But I didn't care. The more I ignored her, the more I realized I didn't need her to complete me. I wasn't some broken man waiting for a woman to fill the emptiness. I had learned to stand on my own 2 feet, and now, it was time for her to realize that she had lost the privilege of being part of my world. Then, on the 4th day, she showed up unannounced. The doorbell rang, and I already knew who it was. I wasn't surprised. She had come, like I knew she would, hoping to regain some semblance of control over the situation. I stood up slowly, walked to the door, and opened it without hesitation. There she was, looking the same as ever, but something was different. There was an air of uncertainty around her, and I could see it in her eyes. She was nervous. She had expected me to crumble when she returned, but instead, I was calm. I was in control. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice softer than before, almost pleading. "Please." I looked at her for a moment, studying her face. I could see the regret, the desperation. But more than anything, I could see that she was trying to take the upper hand again. She wanted me to believe that she was sorry, that everything could go back to the way it was. But it was too late for that. I stepped aside, letting her into the house, but I didn't say anything. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. I wanted her to feel the discomfort, to realize that this time, I wasn't going to play by her rules. She sat down on the couch, her hands wringing in her lap. "I've been thinking a lot," she began, looking at me with those familiar eyes. "About everything. About us." I waited, letting the silence stretch on. I wasn't going to fill the empty space with words. I wanted her to feel the tension, to see that I wasn't rushing to fix things, that I wasn't going to pretend this was just another bump in the road. "I'm sorry," she said, the words coming out in a quiet rush. "I know I've hurt you. I know I've made mistakes. But I held up my hand, cutting her off before she could continue. "You don't get to apologize just like that. It's not that simple." Her expression faltered. "What do you mean?" "I mean that words are meaningless now," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I'm not interested in apologies. I'm interested in action. I want to see you own up to what you've done. I want to see that you understand how much you've hurt me. And I want you to realize that you don't get to walk back into my life just because you want to." Her face went pale, and I could see the panic setting in. She wasn't used to this. She wasn't used to me pushing back. I had always been the one to forgive, to give second chances. But this time, I was drawing the line. "I don't know what you want me to say," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I never meant to hurt you. I swear, it was never about you." I let out a quiet laugh, but there was no humor in it. "It was always about me, Hannah. And that's the problem. You never cared enough to consider me in the equation. It was always about you and what you wanted, and now look where we are." She bit her lip, her eyes welling up with tears. But I wasn't moved. I wasn't going to give in to the guilt, to the manipulative look she was trying to throw my way. This was my moment, and I wasn't going to let her take it from me. "I think you should leave," I said, my voice cold. "We'll talk when I'm ready. But not now. Not like this." She didn't say anything more. She stood up, her shoulders slumped, and walked out of the door without another word. But the moment she left, I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't running after her. I wasn't trying to make her understand. I had finally realized that I didn't need her. And when she came back, it would be on my terms. But for now, I was going to enjoy the quiet. The days stretched on after she left, and for the first time in a long while, I found myself breathing without the weight of her presence hanging over me. The emptiness in the house wasn't as suffocating as I'd feared. In fact, it felt oddly liberating. There was no tension, no pretense. I didn't have to wait for her to return, to apologize, to offer up some version of a future that would ultimately be built on the same shaky foundation. For the first time in years, I felt free. I threw myself into work, keeping myself busy. But I also began thinking, really thinking, about what I wanted next. About what my life could be without her in it. And with each passing day, the clarity grew sharper. I wasn't just waiting for her to come back. I was rebuilding myself, piece by piece. Then, a week later, she showed up again. This time, I didn't even get a message. She just knocked on the door. I stood still for a moment, listening to the soft thud against the wood, and then I opened it without hesitation. She stood there, looking at me as if she wasn't sure what she would find. There was an edge to her, a nervous energy that hadn't been there before. "I need to talk," she said, her voice small, almost uncertain. She wasn't demanding anymore. She wasn't making excuses. She was, for the first time, vulnerable. "Come in," I said, stepping aside, though my expression remained unchanged. "But I'm not going to pretend everything's fine. You're not walking back into my life just because you want to. Understand?" She nodded quietly, almost as if she had been prepared for the confrontation. The realization was beginning to set in that I wasn't the man she had left behind. She had hoped I would crumble. She had hoped that I would beg, plead, or fall apart, but none of that had happened. I had taken control, and now she was standing in front of me, finally seeing the full consequences of her actions. She sat down on the couch, and I took a seat opposite her. There was no hurry, no rush to make this conversation go anywhere. This was my moment to decide how it would unfold. I wasn't the one who had to convince her to stay. She was the one who needed to convince me why I should allow her back into my life. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," she began, her voice quieter this time, the usual sharpness missing. "About what I did, and how I treated you." I didn't respond immediately. I didn't offer her the comfort of my silence, nor did I interrupt her. I let her speak. "I don't know what happened to us," she continued, her eyes downcast. "We just drifted apart. I didn't know how to fix it. And Alex, he was there when I needed someone to talk to. But it was wrong. I know that now." I looked at her, studying her face. She seemed so small now, so broken, as if everything she had once taken for granted had crumbled in front of her. But there was no sympathy in me. "Not anymore. You think you can fix this by saying all the right things?" I asked, my voice cold. "You can't just come back after everything that's happened, Hannah. I don't want your apologies. I don't want your guilt. I want to see action. I want to see that you actually understand what you've done to me, to us." Her face flushed with embarrassment, and for the first time, I saw her vulnerability clearly. She was trapped between guilt and fear. Fear of losing me. Fear of not being able to get back the control she thought she had lost. I could see it in her eyes. But I wasn't going to make this easy for her. I wasn't going to give her a free pass to walk away from the mess she had made. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. "I really thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I needed space. But now I see what I did to us. I've been selfish." Her words were heavy, but I didn't let them sway me. The woman who sat before me wasn't the woman I had once known. The trust was shattered, the connection severed, and no amount of pleading was going to fix it. The cracks were too deep. I stood up and walked toward the window, looking out over the street. The world outside was moving, people walking, cars driving, life continuing in ways I couldn't escape. It was in this moment that I realized I had already let go. I had already moved on. "You know what the hardest part is, Hannah?" I asked without turning to face her. "The hardest part is that I didn't even see it coming. I didn't see how far apart we had gotten, how much you had pulled away. I didn't see how much you had started to live your life without me in it." I turned to face her, and this time, there was no hesitation in my voice. "But now I see it. And now, I see that I deserve more than this. I deserve someone who doesn't just come to me when it's convenient. Someone who actually values me. Not someone who uses me as a backup when everything else falls apart." The silence between us stretched for what felt like forever. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. Not anymore. Her tears weren't going to fix this. They weren't going to fix what had been broken. "I'm sorry," she said again, her voice barely audible. I shook my head slowly. "Sorry isn't enough anymore. And I'm not going to wait around to see if you realize that too late." She stood up, her movements slow, almost reluctant. She looked at me, as if hoping I would say something to take it all back, to offer her some sort of lifeline. But I didn't. "I think you should leave," I said firmly, my words cutting through the air. "I've given you enough time. And now, it's time for me to move on. You had your chance, Hannah. You walked away, and I'm not coming back." And with that, she turned and walked out of my life for good. There was no turning back now. The chapter had closed. As I stood there, watching her leave, I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel joy, but I did feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The control was mine now. And when the dust settled, she would realize just how much she had underestimated me. The days after she left felt like a fog lifting. I could finally breathe without the constant pressure, without wondering if something was wrong every time she came home late or went silent for hours. The house was quieter now, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful in a way I hadn't known in years. But as the days passed, a part of me wondered if she had gotten the message. I didn't hear from her for a while, and at first, I thought that was it. Maybe she'd go back to her life and never look back. But then came the texts, the calls, the messages she'd left on my voicemail. "I know you're angry." Her voice trembled through the phone. "I know I messed up, but I can't just lose everything like this. Please, talk to me. I need you to listen." I deleted each one without listening further. She thought she could just fix this with a couple of words, with a few apologies. But I had learned the hard way. Words didn't fix anything. They were just empty promises. The following week, I ran into her while I was out grabbing coffee. It was by accident, or maybe not. She was standing near the counter, looking over her shoulder as if hoping I wouldn't see her. When our eyes met, she froze. I could see the surprise in her face, but there was something else too, a trace of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I would smile, walk over, and pretend everything was fine. But I didn't. I stood there, my coffee cup in hand, watching her squirm for the first time. The roles had reversed. Now, she was the one trying to figure out what had happened, while I was the one who had moved on. She didn't say anything at first, and neither did I. We just stood there, the noise of the cafe around us blending with the awkward silence between us. It was surreal to see her here, as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed, and she needed to understand that. Finally, she spoke. "I miss you," she said, her voice soft, almost pleading. I raised an eyebrow. "You miss me? Or do you miss the idea of me? Because I'm not the person I used to be, and I'm not going to be who you want me to be." Her face fell for a second, but she recovered quickly. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm here now. I want to make it right." I shook my head. "It's too late for that. You had your chance. And I'm not going to be the one who falls back into the same toxic cycle we had." Her jaw tightened. "So that's it. You're just going to let everything go? Like it was nothing? Everything you did made it clear that you weren't the person I thought you were. The things you said, the choices you made, they don't just disappear with an apology." I replied, my voice steady, not a hint of regret in it. She stepped closer, her face almost pleading. "Please, I don't want to lose you." I was confused. "I made a mistake. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized that I had been holding on to the wrong version of her. The person standing in front of me was not the person I had loved. She had been so wrapped up in her own needs, her own desires, that she never once considered how much she had hurt me, how much she had taken from me. "You can't fix this. You can't go back and change the past, and I'm not interested in playing the same game with you again," I said, my voice finally breaking through the noise in my head. "This is the end of the line, Hannah." The silence stretched between us again. This time, I didn't feel an ounce of sorrow. There was no anger either. There was just an overwhelming sense of relief. I had finally broken free. And now, she was the one standing on the outside, looking in. "I think it's time for you to go," I said calmly, turning to leave the cafe. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at me, her face a mixture of disbelief and sorrow. But there was no sympathy in my heart for her anymore. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with the consequences. As I walked out the door, I could feel her eyes on me. But I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. The power had shifted, and now it was mine. She thought she could have it all, her affair, her freedom, her second chances. But in the end, she had nothing left. And I was done waiting for her to come back. It was time for me to move forward with my life. For the first time in a long while, I felt completely in control. And no matter how hard she tried, no matter how many times she came back, she would never have the power she once did. The story was mine to write now, and everything that came after would be on my terms. It had been weeks since I last saw her, since the day she walked out of my life and I closed the door behind her. I'd seen her trying to call, to text, to apologize. But each time, I remained silent. I wasn't interested in hearing the same tired excuses, the same empty promises. I was past that, and the more time that passed, the clearer it became to me that I was better off without her. In the weeks that followed, I started focusing on myself. I began to rebuild, piece by piece. I'd always given so much of myself to her, to the relationship, to the idea of us that I had forgotten who I was outside of it. But now, I was finding my way again. I spent more time with friends, started working on the hobbies I had long neglected, and most importantly, I began to rediscover my own strength. I was more than what she had made me believe I was. It was during this time of self-discovery that I met someone new. Her name was Lila. She was kind, funny, and full of life. We started out as friends, just sharing casual conversations over coffee, but it quickly became clear that there was something there. Something real, something genuine. It wasn't the fiery passion that had once burned with Hannah, but it was steady, warm, and comforting. With Lila, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. She accepted me for who I was, scars and all. And, more importantly, I finally accepted myself. One day, months after Hannah's departure, I was sitting in a cafe with Lila, talking about our plans for the weekend when my phone buzzed. I glanced down at it and saw that it was a message from Hannah. I didn't open it right away, but I knew that, sooner or later, I would have to face her again. "Are you okay?" Lila asked, noticing the shift in my expression. I smiled at her. "Yeah, just something from my past." I clicked on the message from Hannah, fully prepared to let it go. But her words were different this time. "I've been thinking about everything. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I finally get it. I've spent months trying to justify my actions, but I can't anymore. I was selfish, and I hurt you in ways I never thought I could. I'm sorry." I didn't know how to respond, or if I even needed to, so I didn't. I took a deep breath and set my phone down. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I simply felt a sense of peace. Lila squeezed my hand, breaking my thoughts. "You don't have to answer her. You've moved on." And I had. I had let go of the hurt, of the betrayal. I had learned the hard way that my happiness didn't depend on anyone else but me. And as I looked at Lila, at the life I was building, I realized that the pain had led me to this moment of clarity, of strength, and of moving forward. That was the real victory. As I stood up and left the cafe with Lila by my side, I realized how much I had changed, how much I had grown. The man I had been was gone. The man I was now was stronger, wiser, and no longer afraid to choose his own path. And in that moment, I felt truly free. Free from the past, free from the lies, and free from the idea that anyone else had the power to define my happiness. I had taken control of my own story, and the future was mine to create. For the first time in a long time, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And everything, absolutely everything, was going to be all right.